Hello friends and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be going through everything I watched last month in June that I logged in my Letterboxd diary, and I'll also be highlighting which film I like the most and which film I like the least, which will only include first time watchers. So let's dive right in. I started the month by watching Pet. A man bumps into an old high school crush and begins to stalk her. Things escalate when he abducts her and holds her captive underneath the animal shelter where he works. Pet stars Dominic Monaghan, who you may recognise from the Lord of the Rings trilogy or the Lost television series. I also recognise him from the Love the Way You Lie video clip for Eminem's song, which I used to be obsessed with in my teens. This film's pretty dark and it has a fairly simple plot, but there are multiple twists along the way, which I actually really liked. It had me hooked the whole time, and this is definitely a good one for those who like stalker or obsession films. So if you're into those and you haven't seen this, I would recommend it. I was actually surprised with how much I liked this one. So I gave this one a 3.5 out of 5. Next, I watched Keep Sweet, Pray and Obey. This Netflix docuseries unravels the secret world and crimes of the FLDS, the Fundamentalist Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and their prophet Warren Jeffs. This documentary was incredibly disturbing, and right off the bat I'm going to give a massive trigger warning for child abuse. It's so sickening and I just couldn't believe what I was watching. It's a 4-part docuseries, which is just the perfect length. It doesn't feel like it drags on like other docuseries can feel like, and it just features all these interviews from ex-members of the FLDS church or cult. This will make you so angry and shocked, and just, it honestly just makes me mind blown that cults like this can still exist in this day and age. They completely work off total isolation, so all these members feel like they can't leave or they can't speak out because then they get kicked out of the cult or the church. And then none of their family members can talk to them because if they do, they won't go to heaven or they'll go to hell. So they're just so manipulative. It's insane. Warren Jeffs, the prophet, is an absolute monster. And if you watch this, honestly, it will just give you so much rage. But that being said, it is incredibly well done, and I would definitely recommend it if you're into true crime type of films and television. It's definitely worth a watch. I gave this one a 4 out of 5. I then watched Coherence. Coherence is a sci-fi thriller following 8 friends at a dinner party experiencing a series of reality-bending occurrences during an astronomical event. Coherence stars a mostly unknown cast, but you may recognize Nicholas Brendon, who you may know him better as Xander from Buffy. So this film's been on my watch list for years. I've heard so much good things about it and how it's so amazing. And personally, I liked it, but I didn't think it was anything crazy amazing. That being said, after looking into it a bit further afterwards, I do have a bit of a more appreciation for the film, just knowing how much went into it. But my initial thoughts, especially after the ending, were just, it was above average. This film is categorized as a sci-fi thriller, but there's definitely some creepy and eerie elements to it. Like I said, although I didn't fully appreciate it after watching it, I do think that it was really well done. It's super layered. It would have taken so much planning and logic to kind of get the plot to the point where it was. Yeah, kudos to the director, to the filmmakers. Unfortunately, on the first watch, I just wasn't super into it, but it is something that I do want to rewatch, and I've heard that it's something with really great rewatchability, so maybe I'll change my mind next time I see it. I would recommend this to other people to watch, but yeah, just keep an eye out on the character's clothing. There's definitely a key in there. I gave this one a 3 out of 5. Next, I watched Circle. 50 strangers are held captive in a room and are eliminated one by one as they have to choose who among them deserves to be the one to survive. So this was a really straightforward and simple plot, and in terms of the set, it all took place in the same location for the most part, in the room that they're held captive in. So the film pretty much entirely relies on the dialogue of the characters And I personally found it really engaging and really intriguing, and it did hold my attention. So I was very impressed with what it was able to achieve with very little action happening on screen. It's definitely an analysis on society, how we relate to one another, and how we determine each other's value. I liked it. I didn't think it was anything super amazing, but it was definitely interesting enough to keep me engaged. So I gave this one a 3 out of 5. Next, I watched the classic Rosemary's Baby. A young couple moves into a new apartment and falls pregnant shortly after. However, Rosemary becomes increasingly concerned about their peculiar neighbors and the safety of her unborn child. So this was a first time watch for me on my mission to try and go back and see all the horror classics. And let me say that I really enjoyed this one. Mia Farrow was absolutely phenomenal, and this was the first film that I've seen her in, and I'm an instant fan. There's something about the way she carries herself. She's very petite and very beautiful, and very soft, but she also definitely had some fight in her. I really liked her character. The film itself hones in on the main character, Rosemary, and it definitely focuses on her growing paranoia. So as an audience member, you're constantly, thinking, is she crazy? Is what she's saying right? So I really enjoyed that part of it, and it definitely was, a mystery to me right to the end. Hereditary is my favorite horror film. I think it's a perfect film. I love it. I love Ari Aster. And I heard a couple of years ago that Hereditary was inspired, or in parts inspired by this film, and I definitely see the likeness, especially at the end, which I really enjoyed. So for this one, I gave it a 3.5 out of 5. So next on my list, I watched The Cell. A psychotherapist trained in a new experimental technology ventures into the mind of a comatose serial killer to locate the whereabouts of his latest victim. So over the years, I've seen this film pop up on my streaming services like all the time. So I thought I'd finally give it a go. The film stars Jennifer Lopez, Vincent D'Onofrio, and Vince Vaughn. And it's so weird, but in a good way. One of the highlights of the film would have to be the visuals. They're super striking, surreal, and they just kind of look like a fever dream. Some parts of it are so beautiful, but then there's other parts that are just super dark and just gritty. But yeah, it's a lot. This film is kind of like a mashup of a sci-fi crime thriller with some really strong horror elements as well thrown in there. It actually kind of reminds me of an incredibly dark version of Inception. This one was another one that surprised me how much I liked it. But I do have to say, a trigger warning for this one for child abuse. Some parts were actually really hard to watch, and I didn't expect that of this film. It was pretty brutal, so just a trigger warning there. So I gave this a 3 out of 5, but I almost want to give it a 3.5 out of 5. It is pretty good. I really liked it. So yeah, recommend that one if you haven't seen it. I then watched Remember Me. A young woman awakes in a house after an accident, unable to walk, and has significant memory loss. Being cared for by her mother, who she doesn't recognize, she becomes increasingly suspicious that things aren't how they appear. So I just randomly came across this one on Tubi. I saw the film poster and I just thought, okay, why not? Let's give this a go. This one was not good. So much about this film was so cringy. The acting in particular, the acting of the mother character was just, it was super cringe. Don't want to be a downer, I don't want to be mean, but it was a lot. The editing of the film as well was so strange. It was super jarring, and it did feel very amateur. This film was so weird, and unlike The Cell, it wasn't in a good way. Especially the end, there are some very peculiar things happening, very peculiar lines. I didn't enjoy this one at all. So I ended up giving this one a 1 out of 5. I then watched Irreversible. The events of one night are presented in reverse chronological order following a man seeking revenge after his girlfriend is brutally assaulted in an underpass in Paris. So this is a French thriller which is categorized under extreme cinema for good reason. It's a film that I've been aware of for a couple of years now, and I've heard really good things about it, but I knew of the content that it involved, and I just wasn't sure if I wanted to put myself through that. I just need to say super trigger warning here for the R word, like to the extreme. I'll just start by saying that I didn't like this film. This film is so derogatory and so exploitative, and it basks in it. The whole film literally just made me feel icky. I felt like I shouldn't have been watching it. Content aside, I also wasn't a fan of the camera work in this. There were these frequent use of these spinning transition shots that just lasted so long, like too long, and I was just watching it just thinking, okay, are we gonna get to it? Like, it was just so, it just took you out of it. I didn't like it, was not a fan. And while we're on the topic of timing, the infamous tunnel scene also just, it just went on for way too long, and it was just so graphic, and I just really, I hated every moment of it. It made me feel sick to my stomach, and I just did not like it one bit. And I understand that this was probably the intention of the director, to kind of focus on, you know, the depravity of mankind and all the dark parts. But honestly, it was just not enjoyable. The only thing I did like about this film was that it was in reverse chronological order, which, I mean, is kind of gimmicky as well if you think about it, but the plot itself is so simple, and if it had gone and played out normally, it'd just be kind of nothing. It was a story of an assault and a man getting revenge. I don't know, it gave it something that made it a bit more interesting, and then obviously your mind is thinking the whole time after you see something happen, what's going to happen, you know, what led to this. But yeah, wasn't a fan. So I gave this one a 2 out of 5. I wouldn't recommend unless you're into that kind of really, really dark, really disturbing, I don't know. Yeah, I still wouldn't recommend it. I then watched Evil Dead. A group of friends visit a remote cabin in support of their friend trying to get sober. After discovering an ancient book, they accidentally summon something demonic which starts to possess them one by one. So this was a long overdue first time watch, and I loved it. I haven't seen the original, but after seeing this, I do want to go back and watch it. The special effects and the CGI are just so well done. It's flawless, like it looks legit. I'm not a big fan of CGI, but it was really hard to kind of see where the practical effects and the CGI effects started and ended, which I just thought was amazing. The makeup was amazing, the set design, everything about this film, it's just super well done, and it's actually legitimately scary as well. Like, I was on the edge of my seat watching it, and the violence, oh my god. So much blood and guts and body parts, it's insane. I am a big fan of this film. I really, really want to rewatch it, and I do want to go back and see all the other films as well. I was super impressed. I gave this a 4 out of 5. Next, I watched Martyrs. A young woman seeks revenge against the people who tortured her as a child, resulting in her best friend, also a victim of abuse, to experience the same horrors she had previously endured. This is another extreme French thriller, which has been on my watch list for years now, because all I ever hear about this film is how brilliant it is, but I've also heard how disturbing it is. So I've been nervous about watching it, and I had put it off for so long, and I decided enough's enough, I'm gonna watch it. I thought this was fantastic. It tells a really unique story, and it's incredibly brutal and devastating and hard to watch in parts as well. I even needed a palate cleanser afterwards, so I put on some episodes of Selling Sunset, because this film sticks with you even when you wish it wouldn't. Also, with regards to the ending, I just couldn't stop thinking about it for days afterwards. Like, I would just keep repeating certain things in my head, constantly trying to kind of make sense of it. And I do have a theory, and it completely makes sense to me. So I've been kind of contemplating making a video about that, kind of doing a spoiler-free review and then kind of having a spoiler section just to voice my thoughts and my analysis on it. But anyway, I really like this one. I gave it a 4 out of 5. Next up, I watched Dashcam. An American live streamer and improv musician travels to London with hopes to crash at her ex-bandmate's flat, but when her surprise visit doesn't go down so well, she ends up stealing his car. During her journey, she agrees to give an elderly woman a lift, and all hell breaks loose. So my last video, I put out a full review for this one, so I won't go into it too much in this wrap-up video, but I really like this film. It's actually proved to be extremely polarizing and divisive in the horror community, which is always interesting to see, and I can see both sides. Like, obviously, I really liked it, so I understand why, but I can definitely see why people also had problems with it. But still, it does shock me how low the scores are, because I just thought it was insane. Like, it's absolutely insane, but I don't know, I thought it was insane in the best ways. I gave this one a 4 out of 5. Definitely recommend it, but if you don't like it, I'm sorry. Next, I switched up gears a bit and watched Burnham Inside. Over a course of a year during lockdown, comedian and musician Bo Burnham writes, directs, and performs his one-man comedy special, Inside. So I'm super late on this bandwagon. I know that this was really blowing up, I think 2 years ago in 2020 at the peak of the pandemic, but oh my God, I really, really like this one. I thought this was brilliant. I really, really liked it. I thought it was super funny, witty, clever, introspective, a bit depressing towards the end, but I just thought it was just so well done, and I'm just so impressed with what he was able to achieve on his own. My only experience of Bo Burnham before seeing this was seeing him in Promising Young Woman, which I absolutely love, by the way. Promising Young Woman, I think, is a perfect film. 5 out of 5. Oh my God. It's like, I think it was my favorite film of 2021. Amazing. But yeah, I liked him in that. But after this, I'm now a fan of his work. Like, he is just crazy talented. It blows my mind. He directed, he wrote, edited, filmed, performed. He did everything to produce this special, and I just thought it was just amazing. If you haven't seen this one, definitely check it out. I can't believe it took me so long. So I gave this one a 3.5 out of 5. Next, I watched Final Destination 5. This installment of the Final Destination franchise begins when a man has a premonition that saves him and his colleagues from a bridge collapse. However, death doesn't like to be cheated, and one by one they try to escape their fate. So I'm just going to start by admitting that I haven't seen any of the Final Destination films, so I thought, what better way than to start at number 5? So this was fun and cheesy and super, super violent, which from what I can tell is kind of a trademark of the Final Destination films. The death scenes are super, super gruesome and definitely keep you on your toes the whole time when you're expecting things to happen. I really like that about this film. Like, you're anticipating things to happen and they don't. And just when you're caught off guard, then shit hits the fan. So yeah, I was really impressed by that. The film wasn't amazing, but I did really enjoy it, and it does make me want to go back and watch the others. So I gave this one a 3 out of 5. I then watched Cam. A high-ranking cam girl wakes up one day to discover her account and identity have been stolen by an exact replica of herself. So this is a tech horror which stars Madeline Brewer, who you may recognize from The Handmaid's Tale, and she does an amazing job in this role. She definitely embodies this character completely, and I was just completely fixated on her the whole time. Another highlight of this film are the stunning visuals. It's just so aesthetically pleasing. There are a lot of scenes that are just drenched in these neon lights like red or pink, and it's just gorgeous. The story is super intriguing, and I actually enjoyed it more on this rewatch. This is the third time I've seen this film, and the first few times that I watched it, I don't think I was quite sold on how the mystery unfolded, but I don't know, it's 2022. I definitely feel like something like this is 100% possible to happen. So it definitely made it way more creepier this time. If you haven't seen this one before, I definitely recommend it. It's super dark. It gives you a little bit of an insight of kind of the cam girl content creating world, which I found super interesting. But yeah, I love this film. I gave it a 3.5 out of 5. I then finished off the month by watching Vivarium. A young couple looking to buy a house gets stuck in a maze of identical houses with no escape. So this is a sci-fi horror which stars Imogen Poots and Jesse Eisenberg. They both played their roles well, but Imogen Poots in particular really shined. There's also a little boy in this who is an absolute nightmare. His character, like the way that he acts and in particular the way he talks, is so disturbing. It literally made my skin crawl. I feel like the film had an interesting concept and it held my attention the whole time, but I do think that it kind of needed a bit more development. But like I said, I thought it was intriguing and I really did like the look and feel of the film. It was super aesthetically pleasing. The visuals are kind of dreamlike and everything is so meticulous and in its place. I really liked it. I also looked up the definition for Vivarium after watching this film and it definitely makes sense for this film. If you haven't seen this film, maybe don't look up the definition if you want to avoid any minor spoilers. So yeah, I thought it was a solid film, just above average. I gave it a 3 out of 5. So just before I wrap up this video, I'm going to highlight my favorite and least favorite film of the month. For my favorite, this one's a bit of a difficult one because there are a few that are tied in rating, but I will probably have to go Evil Dead. I thought this was just brilliant, so brutal, one of the most violent films I've seen, and just so much fun. So I have to go Evil Dead. For my least favorite film, it would have to be Remember Me. I really didn't like this film. I thought it was trash. It was very cringy. I do not recommend it. So there you have it. That's everything I watched last month in June. I hope you liked this video. Let me know in the comments what you watched this month and if there are any that you recommend that I watch. I'm always down for a film recommendation to add to my ever-growing watch list. Anyway, I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.